think we are. Just confirming with LSO.
Donna will be able to tell us if we're on.
I think we're on. I see the live.
Oh, if we are live, yes.
Madam Chair, we're now live.
All righty. So good morning or good afternoon. This is the Select Committee on Tribal Resources. We're here today to discuss potential interim topics, and we have an online form that we have got asked the public to provide some comments. And so first on this list, I do see a representative from the governor's office who I think wanted to propose a discussion on interjurisdictional brucellosis management. And looking at potential participants online, I see that we have Mr. Steve True from the Livestock Board. So maybe we could admit him and then have Emily come up and just kind of talk about the issue and why we should be looking at it.
All right, thank you so much, Chairman Ellis, members of the committee. The governor's office did submit an interim topic, which is brucellosis management. This is something that the state and both of the tribes have been discussing for a few years now. But we feel that this forum could be a good place to continue encouraging those discussions, both between our office, Game and Fish, between the tribes, and Game and Fish for the state, the Livestock Board, the state veterinarian. In our last meeting about this topic with both of the business councils, one of the council members from the Northern Arapaho tribe asked specifically about the damages account that the state maintains for ranchers who test positive for brucellosis, have one of their herd test positive, then have to quarantine their herd. There is a damages account that is available to reimburse partially for some of the losses that result from that. So one of the council members from the Northern Arapaho tribe specifically asked whether that account would be available to tribal members within the Wind River Reservation jurisdiction outside of the state. Our Attorney General's office has advised that under the current language, that is not available. And so we propose this as an interim topic, one, to continue the conversation generally between all of the parties, but two, to the extent that legislation is needed, wanted, this would be the appropriate forum to have that discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
So, Madam Chairman, that account became available, I believe, last year as a result of a quarantine over on the western side of the state. We put in, I want to say $50,000 that was available if your herd was quarantined and then you had to retest or something. That money's gone. We pulled it out in the budget this year. And I don't know that eliminated the program, but the funding for it, it was just for the period of 2 years. The funding and was not intended, I don't believe, maybe Mr. True can tell us, but that was not intended, I don't believe, to move forward in the standard budget. But we did give it a haircut in the supplemental budget. And maybe Director True, if you're there, how far am I off on that?
Madam Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, first I'd ask if you can hear me well. I take that as a yes. That funding, there was originally an indemnity account that is available to producers in the state for a few diseases, for tuberculosis, brucellosis, and scabies. And that was begun in 2011 with a one-time appropriation of $500,000. And then last year, with the new statute that your body passed, allowing for some reimbursement for mitigation of quarantine, you also appropriated $50,000. Two separate things. That one-time account is now at a balance of about $650,000. So we asked, as part of our budget reduction, to return that $50,000 to the general fund that you appropriated last year. There is, however, that a little over $650,000 currently in that indemnity account that can cover both for reimbursement to producers for animals that may need to be destroyed in order for testing under the preceding law, or allows up to $25,000 per mitigation claim on quarantine. The board also was instructed to promulgate rules. We have a Chapter 25 rule for the criteria that meet that mitigation standard. But yes, there is still reimbursement available. And as Ms. Solie represented, the Attorney General's office has determined that is not available to tribal members at this time. So that is one good reason for the interim. And if I may, Madam Chairman, I would throw out the other is that 2 years ago, there were some elk that tested seropositive as part of another joint study between Fish Wildlife, UW, and Tribal Game and Fish, or Tribal Fish and Wildlife, which kind of raised a flag that possibly there needs to be some further testing on elk to determine the prevalence level of brucellosis in that elk herd. So that is one of the things that has kind of initiated a new interest in the discussion, and something that, without going off into the ditch today, this can be a long topic, and I don't want to go there, but I think that it would bring about discussions that would be helpful with the tribes, with your committee, with the executive branch, and also with some of the other agencies that have a stake in that process. So with that, Madam Chairman, Mr. Co-Chair, I'd take any questions that you have for me.
Thank you, Mr. True. Senator Case?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Mr. True or Ms. Solie, what's the source of the restriction for tribal funding? Is it statutory? Is it rules? Where does that come from? What can we do to change it?
Ms. Solie?
And Madam Chair, Senator Case, the issue is statutory, according to the Attorney General.
Okay.
And of course, the account is available to tribal members that are in the state of Wyoming. It's not available to ranchers that are within the jurisdiction of the Wind River Reservation.
Follow up, Mr. Senator Case?
Well, just I'd like to propose that we look at that, see about changing that statute. Just because a citizen of Wyoming lives on the boundary of the Wind River Reservation doesn't mean that they're disqualified from the benefits of being a citizen of Wyoming. So I hope we'd look at that closely.
Thank you, Senator Case. Okay, further comments or questions? Senator or Representative Clifford?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have a question on this. And I remember, I don't know if it was a year or so ago, we had a good presentation and there's a slideshow about brucellosis and all that. Where does the tribe's buffalo fit in this? We have each tribe has a buffalo herd. And so if there's an outbreak of brucellosis, and how does that fit in with livestock?
Ms. Solie?
Madam Chair, I would defer to the Director of the Livestock Board. He's certainly the expert on this.
And Mr. True, if you can, and if not, maybe we just include that as a part of the discussion. We don't need to have it all figured out today.
Right, Madam Chair, and that is because the brucellosis can be carried by both bison and the elk herds. So that was one of our concerns early on with the seropositive elk that were found on the reservation. One of those elk had been satellite tracked fairly close to the Eastern Shoshone's little package of bison that they had at that time. And that was one of our concerns, that if the bison got away or the elk were able to enter into there, that there could be some vulnerability of those herds. And that's something we want to help the tribes protect if we can.
So, Madam Chairman, I think that fit into what we was talking about a couple of years ago, and we'd just include that in the conversation.
Okay, any other questions for Ms. Solie? I have one, and it's not on our list or anything, but perhaps an update on the Herrera case during the interim. Or would you mind turning off your mic?
Yes, I can.
Because I recall although we had the Supreme Court decision, there was still ongoing activity in the district courts of Wyoming. And, we heard great presentations on possible solutions about co-regulation of hunting. And I thought there was a lot of great work that we could be doing, but we were kind of waiting to see how things were shaking on the courts. So again, I don't expect you to have an answer today, but I think that's an ongoing issue we need to continue to monitor.
And Madam Chair, I would totally agree, and we can provide an update on that.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Solie in the governor's office or Mr. True? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Next, I would like to go to, I believe we have one of our chairmen from the Northern Arapaho Tribe in the audience. Would you like to present Chairman Dresser with some comments, and feel free to come to the mic and introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, good morning, Madam Chairman, Chairwoman, and also to everybody else here. Good morning. I traveled down this morning to give some testimony for the 162 bill, just to give my comments and testimony about that. To introduce myself, my name is Jordan Dresser. I am the new chairman of the Northern Arapahoe Business Council. My father was on the council previous year, so you might be familiar with him. So I just came in right after him. I represent kind of a new, I guess you could say, a new shift in the councils and kind of what you see. The majority of the age on the reservation is the age from 18 and younger. So you see a bigger generation of younger people coming up. So on the Arapahoe Business Council, there's 3 brand new members. We're all under the age of 40. And on the Eastern Shoshone one, there's also a new one too, who's also under the age of 40. So I'm excited that there's a shift to kind of represent the younger voices as well. You know, so my background is in journalism. I worked for the Tribes Preservation Office as well. I have my master's degree in journalism, so I know quite well about different projects, including preservation and whatnot, and museums and those of that nature. This morning we talked about the Medicaid expansion and how we needed that for us as Arapahoe people. You know, we have Wind River Cares, which is 35% of it is funded by IHS, but we all know that's just not funded well. So that 65%, we struggle to find that amount to cover it all. And as a lot of you may know, COVID really hit Wind River really hard. And we experienced a lot of loss. And with that said, there's an up in hospital visits, clinic visits, everything you can name of. So that was a little struggle with that. But I guess I'm here to just kind of introduce myself to you all and talk about how I want to build a relationship with you all and the power of, I don't use the word consultation too much, but I believe in the power of collaboration, because that's what it really is. It's coming to an agreement and collaborating on key issues and giving different inputs of different things like that. And I learned that very early on through the working with Tipple, because we work with various museums, and we pride ourselves in being able to be at the table and consult and collaborate on these key issues that affect us as well. So those are, that's just the key thing with me. I'm very grateful to be here. You know, I've developed a great relationship with Governor Gordon over time. I'm currently working on a documentary tentatively titled Who She Is. And it's a documentary about the missing, murdered Indigenous women movement. And we're very fortunate that the state of Wyoming through Victim Services was able to provide funding for that project. And it's right now, it's a 30-minute documentary, and it's going to tell the story about 4 women from Wind River. I felt like, you know, I'm very grateful for the MMIW movement because it's shedding light on a topic that's been far ignored. But also, I don't want these women's stories to get lost. So the focus of the documentary is to tell 4 women's stories from beginning to end about who they were, you know, where they come from, what was their favorite color, those type of details. So we're working with the families, and we're pretty close to finishing up a lot of the scripts. We're in script development right now. But the thing about the project that excites me the most is that it's animated. So we're working with an animator from Minnesota. So in a way, it's a project where we're bringing these women to life. And I'm really honored to be working on that project. And for me, it just speaks to the power of storytelling, but also what we can do as communities. I really believe strongly in the power of accountability. And I'm very quick to hold other individuals, including myself, accountable for different things as well. So I feel like if we foster communities that believe in that, we'll create a healthier community. So those are key things that I really believe in. I'm a big believer in green energy. You know, I was very fortunate and honored that I was the top vote getter. And it was the majority of the younger voters who voted for me, because a lot of them see this shift. we're an oil and gas tribe, but at the same time, it's not a renewable energy. So we got to start looking at different things to diversify. And coronavirus highlighted that very clearly, how we need to diversify and not rely so much on gaming. So those are different projects that I really strongly believe in. And, I am hopeful that with we could find different funding to hopefully do studies on the reservation about where would be the good places to have wind turbines, solar panels, all those different aspects, and get a lay of the land. Somebody once told me, Wes Martell, who I have a lot of respect for, once told me that Wind River is like a candy store. There's so many different things that we can do on there in terms of renewable energy. So I'm really grateful for that. And, I'm also Eastern Shoshone too as well. So I'm both tribes, and I work greatly with Chairman John St. Clair and also Co-Chairman Washke, John Washke. I have a lot of respect for those men. And I work very closely with all of them. So in a sense, I just feel like we're trying to transform Wind River into a place that, views the respect of the land in a greater light and exploring the power of renewable energy, doing the different things with going back to the healthcare part, how we're taking healthcare into our own hands and we're doing it for ourselves. And, my big thing also in the museum, I'm working really actively. We have different leads coming up where hopefully we can get some pretty big collections back home. And that would be the basis for a culture center where we could tell the story about who we are as Arapaho and also Shoshone people and all the people who called Wyoming home prior to, settlement. So I want to thank you all today for that. And if you have any questions or comments, I'm open to it as well.
Thank you, Chairman Dresser. Questions from committee members? Yeah, congratulations, and thank you for being with us. I want to just kind of piggyback on an ongoing thing that's been on our to-do list, and we're not done, is the solid waste issue on the reservation. I want to particularly highlight, I know Senator Case and Representative Larson, we've been chatting with Region 8. We had them come to the reservation. We're trying to explore ideas to not only provide a mechanism for like a cleanup, but long-term solution to prevent that from being ongoing. So I suspect that work will continue, and just wanted to get your feedback if you have any on that particular issue.
Yes, just yesterday we had a meeting with Dean Goggles, and it was regarding opening up the 17-mile dump site there. And so it's very needed. It's really needed. And it's needed the better maintenance across the board everywhere. It's kind of getting out of control even more. And my big thing is that I feel like a lot of it is an environmental hazard, and also it's creating a bottleneck, if you will, of just more and more trash building up in a sense. And Dean expressed that he thinks 17-mile, if we open up that part, it would hopefully offset some of that. But it's just a problem across the board, and different people have come to us asking us to do different things with the EPD1 as well. So it's a huge issue. And the big thing we talked about yesterday was finding funding for that. So we're going to have future conversations with him as well regarding that.
Additional questions for Chairman Dresser? Representative Clifford?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairman Dresser, you're aware of the statewide report on the missing murdered Indigenous people. And I think, would you agree with me? Would that be a good study? Because I think there's some statutes based off the report in areas where we could look at some state statutes that can help as far as reporting. And we could do a better reporting based off that report. And so wouldn't you agree a good analysis by this committee looking at that report and collaborating with both the tribes and agencies that are or advocacy agencies that come to mind? There's a couple that have been really involved. But of course, we would do that under the guise of two tribal councils. Wouldn't you agree that's important?
Yes, I
Chairman
really
Dresser?
do agree, just because the, statistics tell a story. And if you don't have them, what story do you have to tell, And I think it's just the idea that we have to start capturing that data but also we have to educate people about the power of telling your story in a sense. I think a lot of these women probably get discouraged sometimes about, there's different factors that lead to that. I believe a big factor of it is domestic violence. And I think that there's a certain stigma attached to it. So a lot of times when you come forward, it gets difficult for you because you have to, number one, you're putting yourself out there. Number two, you're relying on a system that sometimes fails people, So I think that that's a huge thing that we need to educate the people about, that the power of coming forward and talking about these key things that go on in our community, But yes, I do agree. I think that there's different things, that mechanisms and statutes that need to be set in place that help us capture that data and that we can use it to say, okay, this is what's going on. And it's just not a problem here, it's a problem everywhere, Somebody made the comment a few times ago about possibly collaborating with different states around us, and including Montana, and where, you think of some of the bigger, well, I would say some of the cases that got big media attention, Ashley Loring up in Browning, she was from there. Selena Not Afraid, out of Crow. I think that those are really, that would be worthwhile, because if we can collaborate, we don't have to reinvent the wheel in a sense. We create a mechanism and statutes that a lot of other states can follow as well. And we could just be on the same page about that.
Additional questions for Mr. Dresser. And I know, I just want to make, I believe Senator Case needs to leave at 12:45. Is that right, sir? Okay, and then my co-chair needs to be at a meeting at 12:45. Is that right?
A little later.
Okay, so round one, got about 30 more minutes. So any other comments for Mr. Dresser? Representative Clifford?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairman Dresser, in relation to a bill that just passed, originated out of the Senate, it was Senate File 88, Ownership of Fossils and Artifacts. And I know you were in a group email thread, and I'd just like to, with your experience, you have a master's degree in museum studies, and you worked for a few years with our Tribal Historic Preservation Office and stuff. So would you be able to share, did you have concerns with the bill? There was an amendment to take the artifacts out, but could you share, did you have concerns with artifacts being in the bill?
Chairman Dresser?
Yes, you have to look at historically how things are collected, and historically things were collected with the idea that it's like, find it and take it. And I think that that's a practice we're trying to move away from, in a sense. And I feel like if you, and I think it's like a definition, what is an artifact exactly? Because there could be different determinations with that. Is it an arrowhead? Is it a fasting site? Like, what is it in a sense? But also, most importantly, we teach people who go to different places, if you see it, leave it. If you see it, leave it. And that's a key thing. And I think, one thing that sticks out in my mind is that I just believe in the power of bringing the different tribes, especially the Tippos, to the table and having those conversations with them very early on, because they'll help guide you and they'll help determine, one, what is considered artifact, two, what happens to them in a sense, because an incident that pops up in my mind is what happened up at Bull Lake. There was a school, who basically went out there and found an item, and took it to their school and had it, I guess you could call it studied, and removed it from that whole area. So that raised a lot of red flags for us, because we're like, one, who authorized that? And number two, how is that allowable? How did somebody be able to go in there and just take that and take it to their school? That was going to benefit them. What did the tribes get out of that? To me, nothing. Nothing came of that. So I'm really against that. But also, I think that we have to teach people about respecting cultural sites. And that's just the key thing that I'm really about, is preserving. And so for those type of things with that bill, I think we have great TIPO departments, both tribes, the Eastern Shoshone, Northern Rampo. And with those ones, you both have elders that are part of both parts. So they can give direction and guidance. And I think that would be very helpful for that.
Additional questions for Chairman Dresser? Seeing none, thank you so much for being with us. And as things come up, of course, feel free to email us. Thank you so much. I think looking at the list of participants online, we also have Lee Tendor, who's the governor's liaison to the Eastern Shoshone tribe. I don't know if he's available, but I think it'd be appropriate to hear from him next. Lee, if you're in the waiting room, and actually maybe to facilitate the discussion, if we could admit everyone who's in the waiting room, their hands and turn on their cameras, and we'll start working through those folks.
Madam Chair, I've admitted Lee Tendor and also Cy Lee.
Perfect. Is there anyone else in the waiting room on the Zoom?
Yes, Madam Chair, I have 3 additional people, 2 from the Wyoming Outdoor Council. Would you like me to admit them as well?
Yeah, I think for the sake of efficiency, how about we hear from our 2 legislative liaisons, and then we'll move to the Wyoming Outdoor Council individuals. Is there anyone from WYDOT on the line?
No, there's not, Madam Chair.
Thank you for that. All righty, let's proceed to Mr. Tendor first. Or I see Mr. Lee. How about we hear from Mr. Lee if you want to turn or unmute yourself. Welcome and introduce yourself for the record, please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman, for the opportunity. I do not have any additional commentary other than supporting the comments by Ms. Solai, as well as support of Mr. Chairman Dresser. So I do not have any initial content or commentary to add, but I thank you for the time and the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Any questions for the Northern Arapahoes liaison? Seeing none, thank you so much. Do we have Mr. Tendor available?
Yep. Madam Chair, I've admitted Mr. Tendor. He'll have to unmute himself and turn on his video.
Right, Mr. Tendor, we'll wait for you to turn on your camera. Welcome. Please identify yourself for the record. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Community. I am Lee Tendor, Eastern Shoshone Tribal Liaison to the Governor Gordon's office. And I do support both chairmen, the tribes. Thank you to the state of Wyoming for working with both tribes, and Lee himself. And I agree with everything. I believe it's going in a positive direction in which we've been waiting for this to move. And I have nothing further to add, but just to thank everyone. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. Tendor? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much for being with us today. Let's move on to the, I believe the Wyoming Outdoor Council through Representative Clifford submitted a policy or an interim topic. So if we could hear from them and learn a little bit more about the request, that would be great.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm here with my colleague, Yufna Soldier Wolf from the Wyoming Outdoor Council. We'll both be speaking with you today. In a moment, I'll hand it off to Yufna to discuss this topic in a little bit more detail. But just by way of an introduction, we're both here to support the committee in considering a topic to look at extending eligibility for the Federal Natural Resources Policy Account to the tribal business councils. Very briefly, the Federal Natural Resources Policy Account, or FNRPA, was established in 2003 to provide funding to state and local governments that can assist them in federal natural resource policies, plans, and actions in Wyoming. It's a relatively broad-based fund. It's often used for local governments, for example, counties, to be able to participate in resource management plans and forest plans, that kind of thing, although it is used for other things as well. Obviously, federal law gives tribes the opportunity to participate in a variety of ways in these kinds of processes. Nearly all of Western Wyoming is ancestral Shoshone territory. Nearly all of Eastern Wyoming, much of Eastern Wyoming is ancestral Arapaho territory. So when we talk about federal public lands, we are talking about tribal cultural lands. Obviously, there are additional responsibilities that Yufna can speak to in terms of what tribes do in these planning processes. Consultation is one part of it, but there's also the opportunity to participate as a cooperating agency in these kinds of processes. Very briefly, the tribes do pay taxes to state and county governments. It's about $500 million in taxes paid since 1969 to the state and counties. And I would just offer that in addition, I believe earlier discussion was also talking about extending eligibility for a state fund to the tribes. This kind of thing has happened in the past. It would need to be changed in statute. In 2005, the Wyoming Water Development Program account was amended to address this kind of need, an equity issue, in order to allow the tribes to have access to that fund. So there's a precedent in statute and language that could be used to just alter the statute and give access to this fund to the tribes. If the committee is interested in more specifics around FNRPA and how it's funded and how it's used, we're very happy to help do any of that research or contribute in any way possible to the discussion. We have a research brief that we'd be happy to share on this subject. But for now, I think it's important to turn it over to Yufna to talk a little bit about why this change would be important and how it would be helpful to the tribes.
Thank you, Ms. Soldier Wolf. Welcome and identify yourself for the record, please.
Hello, Madam Chairman. My name is Yufna Soldier Wolf, Dos Besi Neteena. I am Northern Arapaho. This issue has come up because I am the former Tribal Historic Preservation Officer. And in the past, kind of what Jordan had talked about was resources and funding is really low when it comes to the tribes being able to cooperatively work with federal agencies, especially when it comes to resource management. I worked in the past at the TIPO office at Arapaho. And one of the things that was hard for me to do was to be a part of any type of federal undertaking when it came to land and management. We lacked the resources to be able to work cooperatively and equally when it came to federal resources. I worked on various projects within a state that I could not write studies for. I could not do any due diligence on any reporting because of lack of resources to be able to be seen as a stakeholder. My hands were tied because we didn't have the funding. I'm here today to really basically just make a point out of that and to be able to say that any help that the tribes do receive in funding and resources is really beneficial to these offices. The TIP offices, as Jordan had, Mr. Chairman Dresser has pointed out, they're doing their best to do as much as they can with what they have. And basically that's what the tribe does. Being able to do this for the tribe would be really helpful for the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho. Being the former TIPO director was really a challenge when it came to be doing any of these projects, and to be able to do this for them is really beneficial. I thank you for your time. I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Ms. Soldier Wolf. Questions for the presenters? Seeing none, thank you so much for being with us today. We appreciate it. Just to clarify, we don't have anyone else in the waiting room. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, I do have Mark Larson, who is available to talk about tobacco issues with the committee.
Thank you. I think we'd like to hear from Mr. Larson briefly.
Okay, I'll admit him.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else in the waiting room?
No, Madam Chair, that's the last person in the waiting room.
Perfect. Mr. Larson, if you could turn on your camera, unmute yourself. Welcome to the committee, and please introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Larson with the Wyoming Petroleum Marketers Association and Convenience Store Association. I did not intend to talk, Madam Chairman. I just, in case the committee brought up the issue that's going to be discussed in the Joint Revenue Committee, I wanted to be able to answer questions. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Larson? Senator Case, did you want to just give us a brief update? I believe this deals with a tobacco compact legislation we worked on years ago.
It does, Madam Chairman. I don't have an update to speak. I understand this is going to come up in revenue as well. It kind of came out of both committees. I think we'd still like to, there are benefits to both governments or all three governments to moving this forward if we could figure out how to do it. So I hope we can keep it on the table, and I'm not sure we can push it, but we can ask folks to talk. And actually, Ms. Soley may know more about it than I do. And I'm sorry to put her on the spot. I didn't mean to do that, but.
Ms. Soley, welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Case. So the governor's office and both of the tribes have engaged in discussions on a tobacco compact that would involve revenue sharing through taxation with just like the state uses a tax stamp for cigarette packages, there would be separate stamps for each tribe to indicate payment of taxes, and then the revenue generated from that would be shared with each tribal business council. The discussions the state offered a proposal for how that could work, and the discussions have sort of stalled since then, but I know that the governor is more than happy to continue those if the tribes would like to.
Thank you, Senator Case. Follow up.
Madam Chairman, and thank you very much, Ms. Solly, and thank you, Mr. Larson. It seems appropriate that maybe this committee could monitor that. We can bring it up in revenue as well and kind of share the reporting, but I don't know if we need to necessarily double down on it. But if we might ask our friends in tribal governments where that stands, and if we want to try to move forward on that or not, we find out.
Thank you, Senator Case. You're an important bridge between both those worlds. So serving on these committees. Thank you so much. We'll continue to monitor any updates. Any other comments from committee members? Seeing none, I think Mr. Co-Chair might want to take us home, but I know we'll have some conversations about prior topics that will carry over from last time into this next interim year. But Mr. Co-Chair, did you want to offer any final remarks?
Madam Chairman, I would just ask committee members to see if they're seeing things any differently than I am in the things that we have. I've got down 7 topics that, Madam Chairman, we might reach out with our committee members and visit about. The first being the brucellosis issue, the second being the Herrera case, third, solid waste and continuing that case. And again, brucellosis, we've talked about. Herrera case, we've talked about. These would be follow-up discussions. MMIP, we want to can follow up on that. The new one would be the ownership of fossils and artifacts, and that kind of goes in together with the effort we put in with select Natural Resource Management Committee on indigenous burials that we talked about a couple of years ago and passed that legislation. And then the 6th one is the FNRPA discussion, and then the tobacco tax. Was there anything else that we?
Madam Chairman.
Mr. Senator Case.
Thank you. I think those sound good. I think it's probably time to take a break from the jurisdiction thing, because I think we kind of hit a wall maybe. I'm not opposed to continuing to discuss that, but it just seems like it needs to percolate. And then one that's always good is to monitor, like the housing infrastructure, kind of the hard things where we can sometimes help to facilitate between YDOT and the utilities. And so I don't know if we can have that as a general catch-all, kind of throw it all together. Those sound like good topics.
Thank you. Any other comments from committee members? And certainly things come up for committee members, just email my co-chair and I, and we can discuss it. So this is not as formal as other committees, I think. All righty. With that, thanks for being here, everyone. And the